Okay, I wanted to throw together this quick video just because I think it's fun to talk about. So my brother Ryan made a TCG of sorts, which you have a deck of 20 cards. Currently there's 40 cards out, and they each have here, we'll just open up this card as an example. They each have a left and a right number, right? And they sometimes have an ability as well. The On your turn, okay, sorry, there are no turns. It's a little like war in the essence that you both play down a card at the same time and you just compare number. And whoever has the higher number will win the round. The current goal of the game is to get to 20 rounds won, although that number is rumored to be shrunk if the game is found to be slightly too long. For note, this game has only been played twice, and and only one of those was a full game. The other one was with a 7 card deck each. But in a typical game, you have a 20 card deck. You can have up to 3 copies of individual cards in your deck. And the other note that's really important is that on your turn, you have to use the value of the opposite side that you used last round. And so if you use the left side, then the next round you use the right side. If you use the right side last round, then you use the left side, right? So you're bouncing back between the two. And the goal is simply to just have a higher number than your opponent as many rounds as you can, more rounds than they do, and you'll eventually win, right? So I wanted to just talk a little bit about the potential meta, about what I think about the individual cards, how good they are, how bad they are, because I just think it's fun to talk about. I don't know. So I wanted to get out of the way. I think some of the best cards in the game, which will get, I think that they're meta defining, which is why I'm bringing it up first because it will reflect in my opinions of other cards, are the Army Ant, the Soldier Subcast, and the Superorganism. All of these have the ability where if your opponent played a value over 70 for 2 of them and then Superorganism over 60, you win the round, regardless of how the values actually compare. And so because there are 3 effects in the game like this, right? And I mean, you can see the stats right here, but it's got some fun pictures and some fun facts about ants and stuff you can take a peek at. But the values, right? I think the values themselves are kind of meaningless in these cards because they're so often the best cards in the game. Here are some stats. So you have on the right side here are the highest right numbers, and you'll notice there's you know, how many cards is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. 10 cards with yeah, 10 cards. They'll all have values 70 or higher, and then another 10 cards under that that are all 60 or higher. So these cards, just like theoretically, these are the going to be the best 10 cards in the game. But that completely um changes, right, because of these 3 cards. And so we're going to go ahead and chuck these ones into meta defining, all 3 of them. But so I said, like I referenced, the values themselves are like I don't think are that important just because the ability itself is just so strong because it completely warps what your opponent can play and can't play. Uh, in theory, you have there's a meta where these cards are just rampant because there's 3 different cards, like I was saying, that have this ability. Almost half your deck can be comprised of cards that say, "Hey, you can't play some of the best cards in the game," and that changes a lot of things. Um, to the point where cards that have 70 or higher or 60 or higher will theoretically become less and less popular, which means these cards will become worse and worse. But then people will want to be greedy and start including more and more of cards that are 60 plus, 70 plus, which will make these cards better, better. Um, and so it's just this push and pull of how greedy you're willing to play on how many copies of these cards you're willing to cut, how many copies of cards that have 70 plus or 60 plus you're willing to cut. And so that's why I think it's meta defining. Although I'm not sure they'll always be the best cards in the meta, they're always going to define the meta. Because if some people just start running decks that have 60 plus, 70 plus cards, well, it's just so easily countered, right? It's always defining the meta. Um, I think, no, as well, I should take a step back before jumping into other cards. An interesting dynamic of the game is this left side, right side, um, left side, right side, back and forth. Because when there's two states the game can be in. You're either you and the opponent are on the same side, or you are and the opponent are on opposite sides. And the goal is to obviously win as many rounds as you can. But when you're on the same side, okay, another step back. I apologize. The right sides are always stronger than the left side. You'll notice on every single card in the game, their right side is higher than their left side. So left sides are generally weaker. And so when you're on your left side and your opponent's on the right side, it's you're more than likely going to lose because the right sides are simply stronger. If we take a look at the stats, there you'll see this goes up to 80 versus left sides. You have one card over 70, one card over 60, and the rest are under that with only three cards fit right. So left sides are a lot weaker. And so there's this push and pull. When you're on the same side, if you're both on left side, you want to be playing the highest left cards in the game. So the cards that have the highest left sides in the game are going to be really strong, of course, because when you're both on left side, you want to be winning that round. Similarly, the cards with the highest right sides in the game are also, of course, going to be strong. When you're both on right side, whoever has the higher right side wins, right? It's not that complicated. But um, when you're on left side and the opponent's on right side, you're more than likely to lose that round. But there are sufficient combat tricks, I guess you could call them, that really change up how the dynamic works, right? Your goal when you're left side versus your opponent's right side, you can play cards such as these three that make you win even though their number was way higher than yours, right? You can play other effects that we'll talk about that give you either swap you back to the same side as they are. There are effects that can swap which side you played or swap which side your opponent played. And so throughout the course of the game, you'll both be on left side, both be on right side, both be on left side. Oh, but then they swap themselves, so now they're on right side and you're on left side, and then back and forth, back and forth. Which I think so. Hopefully that's enough basic like understanding of the dynamic of the game of how the game flows that jumping into these cards will make a little bit more sense. So one reason why right army ant and soldier subcaste zoo organism are so strong is because when you're on left side and they're on right side, you can win anyway. In fact, if their deck is full of right sides that are 60 or 70 plus, um, you're going to win, even though you're on the weaker side right now, right? That's really good when you can take rounds from under the opponent when you were in the theoretically losing position. So I think those three are meta defining. But let's just, after those three, I feel like we should just jump in. And obviously, a lot more interesting abilities are down on the rarer cards. There are 20 commons, I believe, 10 uncommons. Uh, Actually, I'm not sure the exact split, but we'll just start off with the commons and go up the tier list. So a lot of down here is obviously going to be pretty basic. Ant Egg has the ability where you can choose which side you're playing. So even if you're on left side, you could say, "Hey, I'm actually on right side." This card is one of the worst cards. In fact, I made this tier list specifically for Ant Egg and Ant Larva because they're just so unplayable. It's like ludicrous how bad they are. Um, we'll just stop them over there. The reason that being, if you're on left side, that means you were, and you want to play this card. That means you were going to be on right side next round anyway, which is why you want to be, because that's the better side. And so changing to a right side, if you're on left side and use this card to change to the right side, that's just not good because these values are so bad. And if you're on right side, why would you ever change to left side? There's like very little to no reason in this game right now to do that. And so these cards, just the worst cards I've ever seen. I'm not sure if any other cards are going to be in this tier, but those two cards I just have no use. Their ability is functionally purposeless, and the values are so low. So Amphid is an interesting card, just because it's got two okay stat lines. You'll write a couple breakpoints of 70 plus and 60 plus because of these three cards. If it saves safely below that, a little too safely below that, like 30 is a fine number, especially for a common. Uh, but we'll notice on the left sides, right, it's pretty run of the mill for pretty average for left side power, and then where does Ampage show up? And then pretty below average for right side power. So overall, this card isn't awful, and if it's a budget option, right, it's a common card. Um, but it's simply outclassed by a lot of the other cards. Whoops. Similarly, this card just also another basic stat line. It's just a strictly worse version than the Amphid, because there's no breakpoints that are hit or anything like that. So it's also just simply outclassed. Carpenter Ant, the higher right side value, this 65 is notable because it is in that range where you're not 70 plus, you're in 65. So there's only four cards higher than that. Uh, oh, I actually wanted to touch because I never finished that thought. Oh, whoops, that's my personal page. I wanted to touch on the fact that these cards, these cards are actually crazy. So if we open this up, get a better look at this card. Solar Cast. If the opposing value is 70 or more, they lose the round, right? As we already know. But the right value is 68, which means the only card, if you're both on right side, the only card in the entire game that can beat this is the 69 card. Uh, right, like it wins everything. Like on the right side, it wins literally everything except against, of course, Superorganism, because if the opposing right side is above 60, then they win instead. Um, yeah, anyway, this card is bonkers, right? Like even more, it's the ability combined with the right side number just makes it impossible. And then if you're on left side, that's perfectly fine too because you can sneak out wins with that as well. Similarly, for some reason, this card is the second highest. The highest the highest right side card in the game is an 80. And this for some reason has a 79. It doesn't matter if this card even triggers. It's just good enough to be put in a deck anyway. In fact, both of these cards are. Now that I bring that up, which makes it even more meta defining because they're both just so good that there's very little reason not to run a full playset of both, which means cards that have 70 or higher are so much worse when you have six copies of this running around in like every single deck in the entire game. That is a thing I will note about this game as well, is there's very little deck diversity, I guess. You really just run the best 20 cards and will construct what I think is probably just going to be the deck of all time in the current state of the game. Um, I want to get to that, but we'll see how things go. Okay, jumping back into it. 2365. As I said, 65 is a pretty solid number. Obviously, the left side's not going to do much for you. There's just so many best. But in a game that's run by those two cards, I'm just going to slap that in solid. I don't. It might just be simply outclassed as we get further, but we'll see. And this is the first You May Shuffle ability. I think this ability is interesting because there are several right powerful effects. There's these three plus some more that we'll get to, but I don't know if it's good enough to warrant the low stats. Like on paper, if you know your opponent is running specific powers and they burn through those cards, then you're safe to play your high. Like if they've gone through all six of their copies of these two cards, then suddenly you're safe. I guess nine copies because Superorganism is just a better version. But you if they, for example, go through all three copies of Superorganism, then you know you're safe to now play your 60 through 69 cards because Superorganism is in their deck, right? So you're perfectly safe to do so. You may shuffle, makes your opponent have to start thinking about you potentially having Superorganism again, which is interesting, I think. But the stats just feel a little low. I think it's just simply outclassed. It's just not enough utility to actually make it worth it. 31 to 61. Once again, like 61's fine, 31's fine. I think this card isn't particularly good. Here as well, 250. Now, we're going to jump forward because this 2 is actually notable. Although I still think this card is going to be in the simply outclassed here. You're just not going to find room for it in your deck. But I want to hop to another card that I think isn't meta defining, but is probably going to be really strong. That's my prediction, which is this Queen Ant, another legendary card. Organism is also another legendary. Uh, is the next round, the lowest value will actually win, which is an interesting effect because you can do a little bit of building your deck around it and put in some cards that are more like 364, right? 64 is still a really solid value. It's not a bad card, but this 3 is obviously really bad. But in conjunction with the Queen Ant, it could you can make really strong use of these threes because normally people don't want any low values in their deck, but Queen Ant makes your deck potentially have the advantage. So I think Queen Ant is really strong. And so with conjunction with like two values, you could see some play, but like three copies of Queen Ant isn't enough to make this card worthwhile to play. If there is other effects like Queen Ant, then potentially you'd start seeing a new deck archetype that was more focused on Queen Ant potentially instead of focusing on these, and then they run lower values to counter this. I don't know. That's a potential line that could happen, but I just don't think it's worth it. 2657, it's just not that great. 444, I mean, once again, it's a four, but it's like, no, it's not good. Um, Pesticide 4353, this is the most closest that the two values have been between the left side and the right side. But in terms of how high either number is, for numbers here, you really want to be playing numbers on the right side that are between like 60 and 70, because you can always play around. Superorganism is only going to be three copies in a deck. So 60 is, and then left side here, we can see the highest left sides. Um, okay, 43 is actually a pretty high left side. Now that I'm looking at all the good left sides in the game, I don't know if there will be room. Was that even the correct card? Yeah, 43, I think. Right. I don't know if there will be room for it. Uh, but I'll slap it in the solid tier. That's a high enough left card that you could start winning some left sides with it, especially as a common, of course. It can be a budget option. Pupa is just not good. Not good enough. I think same with this card. 21, 51, just not high enough numbers. Same with this card. Just not high enough numbers. Uh, so 36, right. Like 36 actually isn't the worst left side number in the game. And at the beginning of people's collections, this could see some play for sure. Like I had a Venom in my deck that I played in the one game that we played of this game. Because at 37 is a really solid left side number. But as collections start to get filled out, it's just not gonna be able to find space, I would imagine. I keep going to that page. It's like Venom. I mean, that wasn't good enough, but I'll be kind to Venom. I'll chuck it in Saw. Like the left side is the I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it should probably just be in simply outclassed, but we'll keep going. Same thing with here. 140, you may shuffle. You may shuffle as I've already talked about, but I just don't think that warrants it. We'll add in a couple new row columns here. Because, okay, yeah. Because in a game like this, as I referenced, the decks are going to be pretty standardized, and people are just going to be running very similar decks in the end of the late metagame. Obviously, right? We know this game It was just created to have some fun. It wasn't created to be this deep game, but it is surprisingly fun, and it is fun to talk about the nuances of the meta and stuff. And so, but because of the fact that everybody's deck if everybody had every card, everybody's deck would look extremely similar. That means like a vast majority of the cards are just going to be simply outclassed. But okay, FFR. This card is, I mean, solid for sure, right? The 54 value on the left side, that is a high left side. You only got four cards above that on the left side. And one of them, as you can see, has the ability of you're going to get minus 15 the next round. And so this card is solid for sure. This card's great. Um, Obviously, the right side, and I'll double note this here, the right side is not, I mean, it's fine, right? But you're playing this to win left versus left rounds. You have, in my imagining of the game, you have cards in your deck specifically to win left versus left rounds. You have cards in your deck specifically to win right versus right rounds. And then you have cards in your deck to potentially overthrow the imbalance if you're on left versus their right. And so cards that have a really solid left side are put in that for that first purpose that I said. So I'm going to put that in solid tier. I'm sorry, but I'm just going to move you down here. Okay, now this card, right? Now we start getting into lots of interesting abilities. That was a lot of just numbers. The opponent changes the value. This card is really good. As you can imagine, if you're on left and they're on right, and you force them to go to the left, that's just devastating. Especially because most of the time, I don't know if this is true for sure. Let's take a peek. The highest right side values. Let's look at these top. Assuming that these are just too afraid to be in the meta. Let's take a look at these. The left side number 41, 32, 48, 35. What's the left side number on this card? 48. Okay. So including that. So the wow, this card's actually really good. Because if I'm assuming that people are taking out 70 plus out of their decks, and those become less and less common because you just automatically run these six cards and then probably Super Organism as well. Like Super Organism, you can notice that the stats are a lot lower, but it hits a lot of cards. And so I think it's also not auto include. They every deck just runs 9 copies, 3 copies of each of these cards, which just means that every card that has a 70 plus right is just not going to be particularly good for the right side effect, which means the newest high is, of course, like 69. There's a 67 plus a 48, which is really high on the left side. So you can use this both as a high right side. If you're both on right side, you can swap them to the left side, almost guarantee a win. If you're on the left side and they're on the right side, you could swap them back to your side and probably clutch out the win because a 48 is really high value. This card is really, really strong, and I think it's probably just a straight up staple. 364. This card is interesting. As I referenced earlier, this was my random example of it potentially comboing with Queen Ant, where the 64 is quite high and 3 is low enough to never be used, except for when you played Queen Ant last turn. I'm going to put it in solid. If Queen Ant is good, this might be in those decks. Honeydew is an interesting card because you get 10 right, 10 more the next round. And I think the ruling on the floor, I'll have to check with the game creator, but if you add 10 to like a 69, it becomes the 79, which means it will lose to these two cards because it is now over 70. Which means it's super awkward to play because you're wanting to run those 60 plus cards anyway, and then suddenly making them 70 or higher, just makes it super awkward. So I think this is, although I like the 10 more next round potential because you can simply outclass people because of these two. I just pointed out my screen, you don't know where I pointed. Because of those two cards that you know what I'm talking about, the best two cards in the game, quite, I mean, probably. Uh, it just makes this not good. Yeah. Yeah, because it just tips them over into the range where these just win. These cards are actually insane. Because I keep going back to, well, they'll just start cutting copies. But the right side values are so good. Oh, okay. I mean, 79, to be fair, maybe this card's like weird. This card's weird because it like loses to itself, right? But anyway, let's keep it rolling. Okay, here's an example. Right side in the early meta when people don't have a lot of cards, right? These two are rare, and this one's a legendary. So when people don't have a lot of cards, the meta looks different, right? This card is very good in early meta. 77 is just one of the best right side values in the entire game. Alas, I mean it's literally top four, but alas, it is just uh, out meted. Not good because of meta. That is my prediction for these cards. 1152, you pick the same side of your opponent. Okay, so this is another interesting. We got Living Door here and Pheromone Connection. These are two interesting cards because they allow you to swap. As I said, the different cards I feel like you're looking for in a deck building is good left side values, good right side values, and then cards that will allow you to win when you're on the left side and your opponent's on the right side. And I feel like this is a potential. Both of these are theoretically in that, hey, I'm on left side, you're on right side, but I'm going to win unexpectedly category. Um, but Living Doors values are just so low that it's just not good enough. I think, okay, I will say, let me reference another card. What's the other card that like kind of combos with these cards? Um, I don't recall. We'll get back to that in a second. I think that Living Door and Pheromone Connection both have potential with another card that I'm forgetting. So we'll talk about that in a second, that potential combo. But even with yeah, so we'll talk about that in a second if I remember. Let's hop to Pheromone Connection since it's the same ability. 3372, obviously much better stats. Of course, it passes the 70 threshold, which I think is not good enough. What's funny is that even like I want Pheromone Connection to be good because I think on paper the idea of hey, I'm on left side, you're on right side, but I'm gonna win anyway is really strong in this game. But with the 72, I'm just afraid to play it. I'm just afraid to play it. I think it comes down to that. These two cards win everything when they're on the right side. Like almost everything, right? This is a 79. It loses to itself, which is fair. So that's a downside. But also if they play any other card besides these other cards, then it will just win. Um, and then that card is 68. The only card that beats is the 69. This card right here. And so Pheromone Connection, I'm sadly going to put in the not good because of meta. A Living Raft is an interesting effect because if you lose, you get more. I'm not sure how impactful the +5 is, but the right side value is really solid. And so I think it's solid. It's solid. 66 is quite good, and if it has this additional perk, that is nice. Now we get into some really, I mean, in general, the more rare the card is, the stronger it is in this game for sure. Uh, so Raid here is one of the best uncommons in the game because these values are absurd. I think, right, the 73 is a bit sketch in my mind, but the 58 on the left side is how good is that? Top three. Really, really good. And so I think it as a left side card, it's really, really strong. -15 to the next round is not particularly good, but I think, which makes it a little awkward. I used to put this as a staple card, but I think I'm gonna put it as just a solid card. Replete Skull, 45. 45 is quite strong, 74 with no other benefit. Yeah, it's just not be good because the 74 and the 45 is just not high enough. I mean, it's top seven, right? Six. 7. But no. 4169. So 69, obviously the best value in the game on the right side if you're not playing with 70 pluses. But with the minus 10 next round. So an interesting thing about, which I hadn't considered until this moment, an interesting thing about Raid and Skull Collecting Ant is because of this minus, you could play cards. I just put this card, 74, or like, for example, the Pheromone Connection. I was like, the 72 is a little awkward, but if you combo it with Raid or Skull Collecting Ant, you can get it under the threshold. That could be quite strong. Uh, it's funny. Why? I keep remembering the fact that it doesn't matter. Okay, it does matter if you're on opposite sides because you're under the threshold for purposes of them on the left side playing one of these cards to beat your right side, right? That's where it's most important that you're under the threshold. Because if you're both on right side, these cards are almost always going to win anyway. Um, but Skull Collecting It with the 69, I think that's good enough to put in solid. I don't know if it's a staple because of the minus 10 on the next round. Yeah, I'm not sure. Trap Jaw Ant with the 70, it's just not good enough. Bull Ant is one of, I think this card is an immediately staple with the left side of 60. That is top 2 in the game. And in fact, top 1 if you don't want to get into the 70 threshold. However, I do have another note about this card we'll get to in a second. Yeah, the left side is just insane on the trap, on the Bullet Ant. I realized I skipped over Amazon Ant, which is another really strong game at early meta because these two numbers are absurd. 56 on the left side is top 4 in the game, and if you're not playing Raid because of you're scared of the 70, Amazon Ant is very, very strong for a left side card. Well, plus the minus 15 because yeah. Anyway, so I think Amazon Ant is very strong, perhaps even a staple. Ant slavery is one of the more interesting effects in the game. However, it is bad. Um, the Instead of playing this card and getting this, you play the card with the value, but instead of having that value, if you realize you're going to lose, then you can play the top card of your deck and get whatever. If you played the right side value of Ant Slavery, then you play the right side of whatever the top card of your deck is. Problem is these numbers will always lose, and then you'll just be getting a random card from your deck, and you would rather have control. So Ant Slavery actually low key is one of the worst cards in the entire game. I think playing a random card from your deck, like why would you ever want that, right? Am I crazy for that? I think that card's just really, really bad. You could argue that Ant Slavery like makes your deck 17 cards instead of 20 because it never plays itself. But I think having control is too important. So Exploding Ant, opponent changes value. So this ability is very strong, as we've talked about before, because the fact that you could potentially win if you're on left side, they're on right side. Boom, swap them over. Here's my theory, though. I would have to look at the stats of a couple of these cards. If the left side beats Superorganism, it does not beat Soldier Sub. Um, it does beat Army Ant. What other cards do we have here? Formic Acid, it does not beat Formic Acid. So my theory is that yeah, the best cards in the game that everybody's going to be running, left sides are just more often than not are going to be yeah, are just going to be better than Exploding Ants left side. So it's just simply outclassed. Um, yeah, I mean the ability is really strong, but the 24 is just never going to win. And then if you're both on right side, even the 34, and you swap them to the left side, even the 34 is not always going to win, right? It's just not good enough. Red Port Import Ant, very strong card in early meta because it's one of the top highest right side values. +5 next round is also quite strong. I mean, it's fine, but not good because of meta. Okay, now we get someone into one of the most interesting cards in the game, which is Weaver Ant. 514, one of the worst stats lines, but it does combo with Queen Ant. And one reason why that's important is because I think Weaver Ant is potentially just really good. Uh, every time I've used it, effectively, okay, so when it says draw a card, you literally, it doesn't say draw a card, discard a card. Your hand size, you have two cards, right? You play one and then you draw one. And so your hand is always two, unless you play Weaver Ant, then your hand is always three. And if you play second Weaver Ant, your hand is always four. So your options just become many-fold, right? And you effectively sacrifice a round in order to pull this off, in order to gain this strong benefit for the rest of the game. But I still think if you're on a left side, right side disparity, frequently you're sacrificing that round anyway. So you might as well play a Weaver Ant there. Which, side note, does lead to some interesting mind games. If you think your opponent has a Weaver Ant in their hand and they're on right side and they're on left side, and you have a Weaver Ant on your hand and you're on right side, you can get really greedy and hope you both play Weaver Ant. Not the smartest, but it is kind of a fun little mental game there. And hopefully beat them and you both get the strong benefit, but you still win the round. But we ran combos with Queen Ant because you don't have to sacrifice the round. We ran has some of the lowest values that are going to be found in a deck, and you can win the round because of Queen Ant. So I think Queen Ant plus Weaver Ant is just really strong. We're gonna put even if Queen Ant turns out to be bad, I think having extra cards in your hand is really strong. Having more options because sometimes you're on left side, you're both on left side, but you only have your best cards that are on the right side. And so it's a little awkward, right? You're both on right side, but you have the best left side cards. It's a little awkward. Weaver Ant just allows you to pick your best cards for the best times, and that's just amazing. Like Weaver Ant, yeah, I'm convinced. I'm thoroughly convinced that Weaver Ant is one of the best cards in the game. I don't right. I wouldn't call it meta defining because it doesn't define the meta per se, but I do think it should be a three of in every single deck in my mind currently. Okay, almost done here. 70, 80. 80 is the highest right side value in the entire game. You may have your opponent shuffle is pretty useless. So I think this is just simply out. No, doesn't have enough room. Simply outclassed, or sorry, not it's not simply outclassed. It's bad because of the meta, right? Okay, now this card is interesting. As I referenced, I have another note about this. On paper, you're like, well, they both have 70s. That's bad, right? Over seven. That's what you said is you have three cards in the game that make this card just insta lose. That's almost half the deck. Just make this card insta lose. Here's the thing. This is the only card in the entire game. It has the highest left side value. And the only left side value that besides Bullant, I mean it's the only left side value that loses to those two cards that say 70 or higher. And there are only two left side values that lose to superorganism plus those. And so if you're on left side and they're on left or right side, it is pretty risky for them to play one of these three cards when you're on left side. And therefore, it is this card, in my mind, is a really strong left side card. You never play it as a right side card unless you know they don't have copies of these anymore in their deck. But as a left side card, it just wins left side battles every single time. And if they try to use one of these three, they have to risk that they just have to guess that you're going to play this card. And so I think this card is really strong as the best left side card in the entire game because they're not going to risk playing one of these when you're on your left side. That's my current theory at least. Okay, so that's all the cards. And right now with with decks that are sorry, I'm gonna make these images a little bigger. With cards that with a deck that is 20, we only have room for 7-ish of these, right? So, finishing off this video by stating what I think the best 20 card deck in the entire game is. We're gonna look through this. Right now, if we included every single one of these cards, we'd have an illegal deck of 27 cards. So we have to shave off 7 copies. Um, Here are my shoe-ins. So I'm going to run, yeah, I just think these, yep, you're going to run all 3 of these in my mind. These cards, especially these 2 cards, would be more interesting if they were not as good as the right side says they are, or number on the right side, because then it's that push and pull of, oh, should I play it? Do I think they're going to run 70 or higher? And they're like, oh, I don't think they're going to run those cards, so I'm going to run 70 or higher, right? And you have that push pull. But the right, these right side values are just so good. I mean, obviously 79, we've talked about that several times. That I think they're just good enough to put in the deck anyway. Could be wrong. Maybe you want to shave a couple copies of Army Ant because of the 79 if these become too abundant. That's completely fair. Like Army Ant is risky, but like an Army Ant, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But to me, you put in those 3. 63 is a solid right side value. I didn't reference that before. And then it makes your, okay, I say it's solid, but actually, low key, it's going to lose like every single card. Wait a second. Okay, Queen Ant, I thought you were good. And like on paper, it is good because it means you can just win the next round with like Weaver Ant or left side Army Ant or Queen Ant. I'm so sad. I love this card, but I don't think it makes the cut because when are you gonna play it? If you play it on the right side, I mean, okay, I take that back. When are you gonna play it? You are going to play it when you're on right side and they're on left side. Um, because in that way, you win this round because it's higher than every single left side except for Argentine Ant. And then the next round, you're on left side, they're on right side, and you can win that round anyway because it's the lowest value that wins. And so I think that might be good enough. Man, it is hard to cut copies. Okay, I think Weaver Ant is really, really strong, even in decks that don't use Queen Ant. We are going to say Queen Ant. I Queen Ant might just not be high enough. Um, that's tough. Okay, Bullet Ant is the second highest left side in the game, and it safely goes under that 70 threshold. Um, and the right side loses to literally everything. Yeah, so the right side, even though it's a good number, is not particularly strong. Man, making these cuts is harder than I thought it would be. Um, I'm really afraid that you cut Queen Ant here. I feel like you might just cut Queen Ant. No. Okay, here's what I'll say. Formic acid. I think this card. Oh boy. How many cards do I have to cut? 7. Okay, 56. You're good, right? 56. Great. 76. Whoops. 76. Just not cutting it. Amazon Ant. You're not good enough. Your right side is over 70, and your left side is just not high enough compared to these other cards, right? So, boom. Now we have to cut 4 cards. I mean, 4 copies of cards. So 3 copies probably what's going to happen, and then just shave off a random copy elsewhere. Uh, Formic acid, I think, is really solid. With the 67 on the right side, it wins a lot of combats, and you can play tricks with the left and the right side, potentially winning. I'm going to add that in, which means one of these 2 cards has to go. I think this side always wins left sides. This side almost always wins left sides, except against this card. And because this card has this weakness against these 2 cards, I think Argentine Ant, I'm going to take off my deck list, and we're going to add in Bullet Ant. Um, and then with I just have to shave off one copy of a one card. I think I will shave off how many left side cards do we have in this deck? We have Bullet Ant. Oh, this is so awkward. Bullet Ant is our only left side good card. Formic Acid is really good when you're on left and they're on right. Yes. Um, Queen Ant. Okay, Queen Ant I think is more of a combo piece because Queen Ant is used, as I referenced, best use. You're on right side, they're on left side. And then you can like effectively shoe in two wins back to back. However, you have to have Queen Ant with a card like Weaver Ant or Army Ant's left side. You know, these lower numbers, super organisms left side or something. Right, like, and so I'm gonna shave off one copy of Queen Ant. That feels good. I like that. Because it feels like more of a combo piece, and so I don't know if we need all three copies. So yeah, that's my deck. Three copies of every single one of these cards, except two copies of Queen Ant instead. These are the best cards in the game. I think um, most decks should look like this deck, give or take three cards. Like I right, people who want to put in Argentine Ant, I'm not going to disagree. I think that card's really strong. There's a couple other options, but overall, this is what I'm looking like to bring into the World Championships. Okay, well, thanks for listening to me ramble about what I think the meta is will look like, and once everybody has enough cards, et cetera, and so on and so forth. What the dynamic of the game is. I don't know, just some interesting thoughts about a game that I have fun with, and so yeah.